Welcome to Totally Rewarding Chats. And Paul, it is our 50th episode of Since You Joined.
That is a lot. That means that if an episode counts as like a year, I've like been married to you for like a silver anniversary, golden anniversary. Like
I don't know what that is. It's a lot. And actually, all it really proves, Paul, is you are an exceedingly slow learner and still waiting for like me to do well. That's how I would take from that.
I am patient, Sean. I know the day will come where you will grow into this, and as we approach 51, maybe that'll be the magic one. We'll see. But
Well, we'll have to talk about it. So theoretically, season 3 of Totally Rewarding Chats is a couple episodes away, and we are technically past because we did not have as many episodes in season 1. That I've done more episodes with you as a co-host. So
Wow.
I am glad you decided to join. You may not be, but I will say at least half of us are glad you decided to join.
That's right. There's only one regrettable episode sort of in the whole thing. Only once where I sort of abandoned you in the middle because my camera fried and the audience got to appreciate not seeing me for the last 20 minutes of an episode, right?
If you go way back, so I tease Paul all the time, we had one early on, and with Starlink, I've only had twice in my entire time with Starlink in 4 years I've had an issue, and one was on an episode with you where it went out early in the first season, and I felt bad, so I invited you for a whole second season to come back after that didn't work. And then yes, the one, we won't mention who it was, but we had an episode on that got so far off the rails that we'll introduce you to Devin in a minute, that Devin is not old enough to have yet heard it. It got a little past PG, and so we had to not post it. So technically this is our 50th public one, 51st recorded one.
That's right.
With that in mind, Chuck is being patient. Chuck has been patient and done several in-person sessions with me in the past, and we'll get to Chuck on AI and we'll do a speed run in a minute. But with 50 episodes, Devin has produced all 50 episodes. How's it going?
Good. It's been fun. Learned a lot. You guys are great hosts. Happy to be here on this end of it.
I'm a little concerned, actually, at your age, that you consider our podcast fun. I'm a little worried about about you
in the realm of what we do. It's fun for me.
Okay.
Oh, she just lowered the bar. I like that.
A lot.
And you would know, right? So as, odds are, like, let's think about this. Sort of a couple people on my team, my mom, not even my wife, and you are the only ones that have listened to all 50. So that's a compliment. You've stuck with us. Now, some of it's your job, but, like, you've stuck with it for 50. You haven't, like, taken shortcuts. You haven't said, you know what, Sean, I think somebody else on the team might be ready to experience this. Like, you stayed with us for a year.
So the two questions I'll go with, Devin. I'll go with two since I was going to ask them later, but do you have a favorite episode?
My favorite, I guess, I don't know if it's necessarily episode because I don't know what number, but memory would be you used to call Paul out for his background. Paul changes his background. I immediately noticed because it was a whole thing. Episodes go by. Paul, you have a new background?
That's right.
It took so much time for you to notice. I think about it. And now it's like the way my brain is wired, I'll hop on or I'll see it and I notice Paul's background. It hasn't changed since the change, but I'll notice it.
It was dramatic. Like,
was.
You talk about what happens at 50, Sean. Your things start to fade, and
Help me, Chuck. This is he's making fun of you too.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Could you turn up the volume, please?
Because to be fair, the last background was just a whiteboard. How would I notice when you added all this color?
That's why it was so obvious. It was
and
like
you would call it out. Like sometimes there would be things written on it, and you would say something.
Right.
So I'm kind of sad I asked that question now, Devin. So the other question I had is either when you wake up in the middle of the night with a nightmare or you're thinking, oh my God, I have to listen to another episode, which voice bothers you the most?
Which voice between the two of you?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a good. I was not expecting that one. I'm like hearing like you wake up with a nightmare. Like, where is this going?
Who woke you up? Like, who's the creepy?
Yeah, what's the voice that you're like, oh my God, I'd rather be awake than back sleeping?
That's a rough one, but
You
to
don't have to
expand
answer.
on that, it might be I
Just say
was
Sean.
waiting. I've been preparing for this for a year, my speed round question. It
Okay.
might be Sean trying to tell me that he would rather camp in the woods than go to a posh
There we
resort.
go. I was
So
just
here
going to
we
be
go.
clear. Like
Look-
you can't only ask those two questions, Sean. Like there is a clear third speed round question, which I think Devin just volunteered. the
Well, no,
answer.
we're gonna have. I have a whole round for the two
Okay.
of them.
Okay,
Because
perfect.
there's a reason I
Devin
put
gets
the two
bonus
together.
questions. All
And
right.
I'm
So
ready.
we will
But
do
it's
Chuck.
specifically
So
not the voice. It's you trying to convince that camping in the woods would ever be better than going to a posh resort.
well, that question's coming. That question's coming. So we'll lean into that in a minute. Devin does work in our marketing group. For those that are there, the way I put it, I work for Devin. She does keep the show going, make sure everything's there. Stuff magically shows up. Literally, I will lean into the fact Paul and I do almost nothing for this, but show up and talk about comp. Devin does everything, and so you are so appreciated, actually, which is why I want to get on here and publicly say thanks, because literally everyone's like, I hear all these other podcasters about all the work they do, and I'm like, Paul and I are like, I don't understand what you're talking about. We have the Devin.
Magic.
Yeah, we have the Devin.
The first time I met Paul in person, shout out World at Work, San Antonio, but I was with Katie Stokowski and she hear Paul goes, the Devin, and she sits like 2 desks behind me in the office and like we still talk about that. And I'm like, I'm gonna take it, I'll take it.
She's the Devin. Well, here's the speed round. So I'll go Devin, Chuck for each question. So same question. So Devin, are you coffee or tea?
Coffee, always. Iced coffee specifically.
Oh, iced coffee. Chuck, are you coffee or tea?
Coffee, black, no sugar.
Oh, okay. Do you put anything in yours, Devin?
Almond milk sometimes.
Okay. Now I get kind of a fun one. Devin, your favorite all-time artist or band?
Favorite Noah Kahn, and I was fortunate enough, I don't know if you are New England people, but I was fortunate enough to get to go see him at Fenway last week, so that was fun, but definitely Noah Kahn.
Yeah. So Chuck, is Noah Kahn your favorite artist of all time?
Well, remember, I'm in the 50th podcast, and there's
Do
an
you
age
even
demographic
know
here.
Khan?
Do you know
So,
Noah Kahn?
what's the amendment I'm supposed to plead right now? Like, I can't incriminate
Come on.
myself on
What's
this
your
one.
favorite artist of all time?
My favorite artist of all time is probably I like Erasure a lot. I was an alt gen
Oh, yeah.
kid
Okay.
in the 80s. So
Devin,
in
do you know
terms of that.
Erasure? Okay. Okay.
Turn
Yeah.
around, fair play.
Okay, that's fair. Okay. So now the one you've already answered, Devin, but I will give you another chance so you can potentially answer correctly. You have a weekend away. Chuck, we usually ask people without their spouse involved, they're away, so it's completely your choice. Are you going to a posh resort or camping, Devin?
Posh resort every time.
Okay. Every time?
Maybe I would glamp if I had to.
If I had to, glamp. Glamp is in the have to. Okay, we're done with you, Devin. Chuck, what
So I think that the qualifying characteristic is I kind of don't want to deal with people. So that leans more towards the camping, glamping type of category, and I like to be in nature. So on the other hand, I do like service. So so maybe it's a special.
So you need like one of those high-end. A lot of they're making them now. They're called landscape resorts. So they have like a tiny house on it, out by yourself. But it's a nice building with services and everything that's there. Is kind of the new definition of glamping. You need something like that.
There you go.
Okay.
There you go. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
First car you ever owned, Devin, or that you drove?
Car. It was an Acura ILX. It was my dad's old car I got when I got my license.
Okay. Yeah. Chuck, first car you ever drove?
Oh boy, a 1980 Datsun, not Nissan, Datsun 280ZX. Right, I
Oh.
bought it for $800. It was rust and primer, no interior, with 210,000 miles.
Okay. With the 280ZX, at least you went style it, rust and style.
Rust and style, yes.
Okay.
You imagine the number of people who could fit in a 280ZX coupe was impressive in college. So
Yeah, how many did you get? So if you Google it, Devin, have you ever seen one of these in the wild?
No.
Um, Think about like the small little sports cars, like the little one. How many did you get in there, Chuck?
6.
All with seatbelts, right?
No, There's only two seatbelts,
I
and
was
I
just
was
gonna say
assuming the
they
seatbelts
didn't have
worked.
that many seatbelts.
I don't think we had
Back
seatbelts.
in my day, seatbelt. I don't know if it was a law at that point in time that people in the back had to have seatbelts. So, and the
Actually, it always
back
spawns a
was
second
just a
question for
hatchback.
me. Devin, you pull up next to a car next to you and you want them to roll the window down. What do you do?
I can't say I've ever done that.
You haven't
But
done
oh, so from the window
the crank to roll the window down? Is that what you would do?
My thought was just probably gonna go like.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? Yeah, okay. Yeah. Okay.
I can't say I've ever like experienced that though.
So I have, because I pulled up to my daughter going the opposite direction one time when they were younger, and I went like this, and she's like, I got no clue what you want, sir. And so I had to explain what was going on. She's like, I don't know. She thought I was doing like crazy. She's like, why? Yeah. So Devin, are you a crunchy or creamy peanut butter person?
Creamy.
Okay. Chuck?
Creamy.
All right, those are all right answers. We'll give you one, Devin. Devin, you scored almost. You got 4 out of 5 right.
Take it, I guess.
Thanks so much, Devin. We're going to go to the boring part to which you will hear later as you go, because you've listened to literally 51 of these. Oh, 50. We've determined at some point you'll get old enough to listen to the other one.
Who knows when it will be? But
Great over a cocktail.
Yeah. Thank you so much though for everything, because it really is. You make this so easy for us that we just kind of keep churning these out. I think Paul and I initially were like, would weekly drops be difficult? And honestly, it's not, because the people have been great, and we click stop, and magically they show up every Thursday. So I really appreciate you.
of course, I'm happy to do it. Thank you guys. It was great
you,
to be
Devin.
here.
Yes, thanks.
Have a great episode.
Thanks for appeasing us, Chuck, so that we could get her on. Erasure.
It's our first dual guest. We've never done that before with like 2 guests at once.
Yeah.
So
That's
Well, it's the
true.
50th, Paul. Like, you know,
it's special.
Yeah,
like,
but I wanted to
do
make
more
sure we had
things.
someone special on, and I mean that in the
Oh,
most
Lord.
positive way, Chuck. On so that people know why, because I've done several sessions with you and you're well known. But for people who don't know you, give us your background, because you do have this very unique and expert view from different angles, and so I want people to understand where you're coming from.
So I kind of started my comp career, like Total Rewards career, by happenstance, right? Was really good at running Excel and analysis, ran to a company called Aon, walked in, did their analysis really quickly. They didn't let me leave. And next thing I know, I'm, a comp consultant for Aon Consultant before Hewitt had acquired them in this back in the day. And then because I have some sort of, let's say, schizophrenia or something like that, I decided I wanted out of consulting, right? And so I did a bunch of in-house stuff with multinational and globally large Fortune companies. I did Fluor Corporation, global compensation director, was VP over at Michaels, the arts and craft retailer, and then AMN. And in the mid-time, right, I kind of went back with Ascent into consulting, and then came back to it in full with Obsidian, right? So, and during that period of time, and this I think is a lot of your audience will appeal to. It's like, oh, well, benefits. Well, let's give you benefits. Tech. Let's do tech. This. Let's do that. I mean, there was a time at Michaels I ran the customer service center in terms of that. And so it's there's kind of opportunities, and with that came a lot of tech. Right. So 20 years of doing systems. I was Workday customer, like 62 in terms of that. Did PeopleSoft, did Workday, did SAP. This is video, right? So these people saw my expression SAP. But all the majors over the course of time, and it's been so you have this kind of weird element of practical knowledge, right, in terms of how to do comp, but then also all the system issues and things that rely on it. It's like that translator person. It's like, okay, no, this is what they're saying. This is what it means in tech wise. This is how you can optimize your system for that particular aspect. So it's this kind of weird fall into career, so to speak. So and then in the meantime, we see each other on tech. I'm president of Texoma Total Rewards. So
yeah, that too. 2 questions come to mind from that. What did you want to be when you were growing up before you fell into comp? Because we always talk about people fall into it.
Are you asking from the, first grader, what do you want to be when
No,
you
from
grow
like
up, draw the diagram
before
perspective,
you went
or
in, like what did you go to school for, or what did you think you were going to be, or did you? Because it probably wasn't comp consulting.
the first grade story is probably better, but no. So my undergrad, I was pre-med. So I went to
Oh,
Cal,
cool.
was pre-med, and then did let's see, pre-med. Yeah, so I did psychology was my background. And then I went to do a master's in molecular cell biology. That was going to be master cell biology. Then go to medical school, and about the second semester of MCB, I was like, I hate this, right? In terms of this, and got out second semester of my master's, and then said, I'm never going back to school. That lasted for like a decade and a half. Went back and did the business side of it, but I was going to be some sort of scientist, medical doctor at some point in time, right? I'm sure my parents are still like hoping that will happen someday, but you know,
They're still holding out hope. And
yeah.
so, when you ran customer service, do you mean customer service like in general, or for internal questions in HR? You just mean like people who had questions with customer support for Michaels?
Yeah, so for some reason, in terms of when I was there, both the HR Service Center and the Customer Support Service Center reported to this Total Rewards VP position. Now, this next statement makes me seem a little strange, but as a result, this is right before the pandemic. When the pandemic hit, I was like, I can't do both, right? The Customer Support Center needs to be its own operation, and then I'll take the HR Service Center. So,
I
but
can imagine
things
during
like
COVID,
breakage,
weirdly,
yeah.
Michaels probably had a boon during COVID, right? Everyone stuck at home, gonna do craft stuff, or did they
It
like?
it did.
Yeah.
It did. Yeah, you can. I think you can look through the public company documents and say, yeah, it did really well during COVID. Um, there's a whole other story about how we thought we were going to do, but we did really well in COVID. So
So with that background, I'll just open it up because when we spoke about a couple things while I was on the infamous Total Comp tour, one of them was the AI piece. And so with the different perspectives and the clients you have, where do you see kind of companies in their AI journey? And I'll just double down. You can go wherever you want with it. Do you see
mhm.
do you see users trying to solve it themselves with AI, with Excel, or do you see them leaning into the vendors? Like, where do you see things right now overall? Because I think between yours and, to be honest, Paul's perspective, let you guys go back and forth on what you're seeing, because I don't have nearly the view that you two have.
It's I think the best way to say it is it's the wild wild west right now, right? And it is, there are plenty of, okay, there's some who take a path of, okay, I want everything that I can control within my domain in my privacy secure vaults, and I'm going to write my own things, right? Then you have others like, well, let's just throw it in chat GPT and have a nice day, right? And then there's every single software company in the middle trying to sell you something that should help you, right? In terms of that says, hey, I can do this with this, or I can do that. So I think there's a wide range of what service providers can provide, and from a client point of view, a wide range of what they are willing to go down the path of. I think part of it is technology speak, right? But part of it is just general comfort, right? We'll see clients sometimes that have like they don't want AI because of various privacy, security, perhaps even job protection concerns, right? In terms of that, and there are others who are like, well, I just threw it in this, and then I threw it in the deck, and then I gave it to the board. I'm like, oh, probably should have a human in the loop there. There's this kind of really weird thing going on in the market because it's still relatively new. And one more point, and sorry, Paul, I'm just talking
No,
away
you're
here,
good.
right? But I think people get really, the term AI can be really, it's not very clear. It's like English, right? It's imprecise, right? It's like, things are flammable versus inflammable. What's the real difference in that? What is AI, right? In terms of, is it LLM, large language models? Is it deterministic code, right? How's that going to work? And the average Total Wars person that's not their forte, right? That's not something they've delved into in a while, before. So
Yeah.
Two things. I'll let Paul reply, but before he replies, You're the guest, Chuck, so I don't care if Paul talks. So just to be fair, we invite you. We can get Paul's opinion as we go. So really, just take whatever time you need as you go through. Sorry, Paul.
It's fine. No, I think, and I'm going to paraphrase a joke that was then retold as a joke by a friend of mine. So it's like a 15-year-old joke about big data before big data became sort of a past word. Right now it's AI. That was retold by my good friend Brian Briscoe at a conference a few years ago that made him kind of famous within the rewards space. And that is, I feel like still AI is a little bit like teenage sex, right? Everybody's talking about it. Nobody really knows how to do it, but everyone thinks everyone else is doing it, so everybody claims that they're doing it. Like there's a little bit of that happening with AI still, right? Like I got to build something, right? Like everybody thinks they need to go build tomorrow because everybody's talking about building tomorrow. But even some of those talking about building are a little scared about the build they're doing. Like, so I think it's a different spin in the Wild West, Chuck. I mean, I think you're right that everything is happening. All the things are happening. But there's still a lot of mystery, mystique, and hype happening about what is being accomplished, right? And I think some of that's the marketing machines of the big software companies. I've got to get AI all over my brand somehow. But a lot of times that AI is just doing the thing that you could do before.
Yeah.
You know, rewards teams are trying to find those new workloads, those new processes that have always been manual, not tech-powered, but manual. Can I use AI on that? But then how do I navigate this world of data governance, security, privacy within that AI lens? So we have to get a little bit past the everybody's doing it sort of phase of AI and a little bit more into the, you know, the classroom where they teach the proper sort of risks and protocols, if you will. You know, because I think a little bit of curation around what's possible, what, you know, what's real, what's really safe, what's not safe is kind of an important stage that we skip past because this happens so quickly. So there's a little bit of a re-reckoning, I think, happening around AI at this sort of stage in time, summer of 2026, where we're getting past the, you know, many episodes ago, Sean, it was, is it a toy or is it a tool?
Yeah.
It's clearly a tool, but now we're deciding, is it a hammer, a screwdriver, a little bit of both? Like, how am I actually going to put this into play? Which is an exciting time, but it's a little bit frazzled because the hype is so big. It's been difficult to land, like, what's really happening.
I was in the room when Brian told that joke, and I think it was very spot on, right? In terms of that, and I'm glad you brought it up because the other aspect of it, and you know, if my kids listen to this someday, I apologize for Dad being a little crass, but there's demand for it, right? You know, there are people saying that, you know, up top that says, hey, you need AI in what you're doing. What are you doing about AI, right? And people are like, I did some job descriptions on ChatGPT. Right.
Do you think we're past that though, Chuck? Like I feel like in the past 5 or 6 months since spring and maybe since World at Work, I think, and maybe it's because AI is everywhere and you can't, you know, everyone's to your point, Paul, putting it in. I haven't seen as many companies get the mandate that you have to be using AI. I think they might be asking how or where, but there isn't this just like go do AI mandate now.
I saw my first incentive plan that had the percent of employees using AI as a measure in the incentive plan.
Yeah.
Like,
Did it incent how they use AI? Speaking of Brian's comment, like I'm like curious, like how are they using? Like, how do you measure that, right, for success?
Oh, I'm not saying it was a good plan, but I think
Right.
it reinforces that, like, Chuck's perspective, I think, is true. I think there are still some mandates on use AI. Your budget's not growing, figure it out, right? The only thing you're allowed to spend more money on is tokens, not people, not software. Like, I've seen that narrative in places. Is it everywhere? I don't know. I don't have a benchmark for that, but it's happening.
I would say, Sean, to your question, I think if you take the, you know, the companies in the United States or globally and whatnot, and you say, you know, everybody has a different definition. It's like large companies, right? And we'll just say 10,000 employees or more. They're on their path. They're looking to just try to define, okay, you know, what's the AI screwdriver? What's the AI hammer? What's the AI lever? What's the, you know, how many AI bots can I have bots upon bots, right? Those types of things, right? The mid market's somewhere in between. And the low market, right, let's say 2,500 and under, they're starting to kind of get the trickle down of like, well, I am a department of one person, right? What can I do? To Paul's point, I don't have more budget. I don't have more things. Here are the tools I have. Let me go figure these things out, or maybe use a tool from a software vendor that's provided to me that will take some of this, to your point, Sean, the manual entry part of the day away, right? Now, you and I had a conversation one time about tokens and pricing. That's
Yeah.
going to come to roost, I think, in the near future.
Yeah.
In terms of token price is going to go up, and if you're just kind of slamming a bunch of data into AI and using AI to kind of try to like figure it out, well, soon that's going to cost you a lot more, in my opinion, than it
You
will.
and I agree
in the
on that.
future.
And so, like, how do individuals navigate that? Because I think there's two. Paul, leaning back into what you said, and this is my thing, is like if you decide to use AI for something that you could do in Excel without AI, or somewhere else, and token fees rise. The cost to serve for the vendors or your internal service rises. Are you going to have to move back? Or are you going to get the call? Where are you going to get the money? Because I think, in my opinion, people aren't counting on that. To your point, Chuck, around you need to do more with the same or less. Well, they're not counting on token fees because there aren't any right now, really,
Correct.
like yet. So how do you see companies navigating, or are they even navigating that yet, Chuck? Are they still in the place where they're like, I don't even know what I should be doing with AI and where I'm not even going to worry about token costs yet?
I think the fact that the three of us can talk about token costs, right? We probably should define what a token is, because I think the audience may not understand how the pricing index works on the back end, right? I mean, a lot of them are using, let's say, Copilot, or on a subscription basis, right? Where there's limits in terms of or Claude subscription, where there's limits on how much data you can go through, right? If you're using the back end with an API or something like that, there's a token perspective. They look at your request of what you asked for. That's generates token. Every token is a fraction of a cent, right? And that multiplies into what your actual cost is going to be, right? In terms of, so the more tokens you use, right? So tokens probably not a great measure for incentive plan in the future, but that's kind of where that particular aspect is going to be. I think the honest answer to the question, Sean, is that if you're going the software provider route, they're building that into their framework and cost structure, right? So in terms of like, meaning not the software of the AI people, but the software of, let's say, a Workday or an ADP or a UKG and stuff like that. They're trying to put that in their aspect, but they're doing things behind the scenes to reduce their token, to optimize their token usage, right? I think, ask me in 12 months, I think, kind of where people are going to be on this
But that's the
particular one.
catch-22, Chuck. I don't think, unless you buy an AI specific module, and I don't think there's as many of those out there now. Like that kind of went, in my opinion, came and went really quick, because people kind of, it was assumed you were using AI, right? So everyone's using it, so it's assumed. I don't think those costs are built in yet, and so they're using AI because it's so inexpensive, and they're eating it. And Paul would know better,
Right.
like from who's using it in total rewards. So they're eating the costs right now to win business. At some point in time, the price will, the cost to serve, if you don't want to use token costs, but the cost to serve or the cost to deliver that tech is going to go up. And so how married do you
Right.
get to the vendor over a long-term period? Like signing a long-term deal right now, actually a 3-year deal on some of this tech is actually, in my opinion, like if you like the tech, it's a pretty good option right now, because the price is the price for 3 years.
Right. And I would say, Sean, to that point, that's why you see a lot of these like HRS systems, HRM systems trying to really double down on their internal AI tools and whatnot, is that particular aspect, because now you're going with a vendor that right? They're trying to provide you reality. I mean, the hard part about this is that at the end of the day, part of this is still just, from something you and I, or even the machine learning part of this, is it's a data problem. Right? It's the data that comes out of the HR systems or whatnot, it's not in a shape to be really used, right? For this, right? I think there's a Drexler University study came out last year that said, like, if you're looking at your AI implementation, only 80% of people 88% of organizations say that they don't have their data in a way, shape, or form that can be absorbed into this, right? In terms of NBUs, right? And I think Paycom came out with something that said, like, 80% of organizations have disparate data, right? Multiple systems, multiple things, connections, and stuff like that. So the world of data that these tools rely upon, right? It's a little bit of a mess, right? So I guess I finally got to answer your question, Sean, even though I stalled with the 12-month thing, right? You know, it's back to the root. Like, if you have cleaner data and your agents isn't trying to massage and scrape through your data to make it better so it can use it, right? That's going to go ahead and give you a leg up in many ways, shapes, or form.
Yeah. The only thing I'm trying to think through still, and I don't have a clear answer around the AI and token costs and how it affects pricing, is this in theory should change the economics of how software sort of gets built, capitalized, and priced, in theory, right?
Yes.
Meaning historically, provider invests a bunch to build something and gets paid sort of after you've built it, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's a subscription back in the license days, whatever, right? But there's sort of a capital investment that then gets sort of paid back over time. And of course, there's a service component keeping that live in a SaaS world. But it was all like low ongoing op cost, heavier investment. It should be all flipped now, right? Like, it should be lower upfront investment, heavier op cost. We just don't know how they balance, right? So is the ongoing sort of token cost, the ongoing AI execution cost, how is that going to compare to what historically was like an amortized, form of that investment? Is it just the same? And all the software companies have to eat that sort of previous investment once, and then the economics all work? Is there new spend needed, which is what everybody's trying to do, right? Nobody's putting AI in the product and trying to give it away for free.
No, but the
Right.
cost
So
of
it's just, how does
development
the
might go down.
economics rationalize is sort of the big
Right.
question for me. And I don't think we know that yet. I think there's still
No.
a lot moving around, that's for sure.
Because they're
and
using
there's-
AI,
and there's-
right? Software teams are using AI to write code. So, like, we don't know what the cost structure is a really good point, Paul. Like, they're trying to drive that down, and whether that's to increase margins or to cover the costs of other pieces of the data, right? That, go old school, right? The cost of your internet service versus sending out 3.5-inch floppy disks, right? Like it's the, the old on-prem software, right? Like, you had these costs, like, it didn't cost different. It cost different. It cost about the same, but it was different. And we just had to figure it out.
Totally. And
You know,
in all candor, like the way that tokens are priced and the way that AI spend is priced, for most organizations, you don't even know what you're spending or what you might spend soon, right? I mean, I just, as a business owner, I look at my own team's sort of AI usage, and it was a fixed fee for a long time. Now it's not. But we don't know how much it won't be as pricing models evolve. So, like, it's impossible to budget for. So how do you build pricing around something that you don't actually know what that consumption cost will be?
Well, but they do consumption costs. So that's one of these things we'll talk about maybe later navigating. Do you go to something that's flat rate? Because then it's the vendor's problem. If you go to a consumption-based model and you're not in control of the consumption, that becomes difficult, right? I don't know how many credits something costs because I don't know how many pulls is, grabbing from certain places. I do want to go back though, Chuck, you mentioned the data. So how are you seeing companies get themselves ready? Because to me, that is the crux of using the AI is having data. And the one I use a lot is location. Like, when people are like, oh, it can't be that hard. I'm like, well, what is location? And as a remote, and Chuck, you can tell people who've dealt with this before, you're like, location can mean like 8 different things. And so when you're different systems, like, how are you seeing companies get themselves ready to be able to use AI? Or are they highlighting them and kind of firefighting every time something comes up? Or how are you seeing them get, and I guess I'll add and then let you go, the best practice for getting themselves ready?
So I would say a couple things, right? There are different gradations of where people are. Some people are like, we don't know we have a problem, right? The fact that location is different between their how it's defined in payroll versus HR versus recruiting versus clinical, right? They're kind of like, oh, we have an issue, right? But it reflects itself in this, right? It reflects itself in, like, you have discussions in meetings on whose data that who is right. And so like if you're in a meeting and someone's like, well, you know, you're arguing about where the data source is. Are you using finances numbers? Are you using accounting's numbers? Are you using HR numbers? Right. That's kind of a sign that you're kind of in this world of like, you need to do that. You need to go evaluate and say, let's pick, the fields here, right? Let's just call it something small, right? Take 10 fields and start working on those 10 fields that these questions come up, right? Too often people try, oh, we're going to clean everything, right? We're going to go back and get people to do this and do that. And I'm like, okay, that's great. And that'd be nice. And your AI solution will like that, right? But at the end of the day, it's still a business issue, right? We are working for businesses, and businesses have objectives, margins, and whatnot, right? And so these are the things that cause constant issue, right? You use location. It's like, well, the HRS headcount doesn't match the finance headcount, doesn't match the payroll headcount, right? And then people stop trusting the data, right? Well, then it becomes like, well, I own my data and you own it. And instead, what you need to do is like, okay, we have an issue with this particular field. Who owns that data set? How does that translate to the downstream systems, right? And kind of move in that regards, right? And so you can kind of pick those types of things, right? Some of the things that are common, right? Location. The other are cost centers versus project centers. If you're in Workday, maybe it's supervisory organizations, right? If you're UKG, it's org levels, right? These types of things, and say, okay, who owns what, and take something from your your finance accounting colleagues, right, and say, hey, like every year, if you're using a system, you're going through a SOX. Right. What are your controls on this? They can look through that. You take screenshots, right? The same thing should happen with those kind of confusing data points, right? Every year, every quarter, whatever frequency you determine, at least a year, right? You kind of go through with everybody, get everybody knows this is what we see. Please validate that this is still what's going on, right? So you're not spitting out zeros when they're thinking they're supposed to get ones, right? In terms of that, I don't know if I answered your question and just went off on a tangent, Sean, but so.
Well, I mean, there's that, and then how do you help them determine? How have you helped clients determine what is the right data? To your point, because I think one of the AI is kind of interesting from the standpoint when we talk about it is you can pull in so much more data and you can process so much faster now on a number of things.
Right.
And the question is, just because I can, should I? Comes up a lot. And so, how are you helping companies navigate that piece of, well, I could, but
Yeah, I think it goes back to you can't boil the ocean, one, right? And there's infinite number of fields in the HR SAT, right? And it goes back to the business. Like, what are the 5 to 10 core metrics that your system or your organization is controlled upon, right? In terms of that, if you look at an HRIS system or even kind of comp controls and whatnot, you have areas that you're like, these are the things we do to anchor the programs down or the systems down, salary grades, ranges, and from a comp speak perspective. But in the system, it's probably like work location, taxation, right, earnings and stuff like that, and how to get coded back into your ERP system. So how, let's say we go and say, hey, what are the 5, 10 standard core metrics that you're having trouble with? Let's focus on those, because, it might seem like, it's a very small population, but the tentacles are long, right? In terms of that, and they're usually cross-functional, right? These are things that they use in board meetings. These are things that they use in terms of statistics to report, right? And you kind of make sure that everything's levered together and put together in that particular aspect. And then you can do the ancillaries, right? But, and Sean, I think I'm stealing a little bit of your words, right? From the time that we sat together, which is it has to solve a business problem. If it looks pretty, then you have the dashboard, right? And the issue that with the dashboard is there's no action point on that, right? It's just something to look at, right? And it requires the individual to interpret that dashboard and say, hey, I got to do X, right? My turnover is increasing, why, right? In terms of I see it on the dashboard. Whereas if you focus on the metrics, you should be able to answer the question, once you get your data together, it's like, seems to be the driver. Here are some solutions, right? To do that. And that's kind of the set that we come in with organizations and say, hey, think about it in this particular aspect. right? In terms of that, and it can be many different things, right? Some organizations like our people are always complaining that X isn't assigned right. Their PTO balance isn't correct. Their comp rate isn't right. Right. Okay. These are issues, and they could be compliance issues and whatnot. Right. Well, it's the business case. Okay. Happier workers, longer longevity. Right. Accurate paychecks. Time spent. Communicating. Right. There was I think it was a Deloitte study that came out. Like I said, that HR people spend 55% of their time communicating, right? 20% of their time like solving data problems. So that leaves them like, 25% of their time to actually do the hard work of, HR and total rewards. That's, okay, let me squeeze into that hour. I have 8 hours that are broken into 15-minute spots over the course of my week to try to figure out how we're going to go open, a Mongolia office and salary structure and stuff like that. Right. It's not a recipe for great deep thought and success, right? And perhaps it's even more of a recipe to just kind of let the AI go, right? Which may not be the exact where you want that to be at that point.
So, thinking through where would you have companies start? Or what are or the 2 or 3 things you make sure that they have in place?
Yeah,
Be curious where you
I think
think there's different opinions.
I think you kind of have to have a level set of where you are in, for lack of a better word, your kind of total awards maturity type of thing, right? Are you, is everything coming by spreadsheet? In the spreadsheet analysis wizard is the one who can put all this stuff together, right? Do you have set data fields? How's your data, right? There's kind of this evolving model, so to speak, right? In terms of like where are you realistically, right? So I've gone into rooms and talked a little bit about this, and when I say things like, hey, which spreadsheet is the latest, right? In terms of that, and so you go in, you see clients, and they'll have something like final bonus 260714, V1, V2, V3, V4, V5, V5 final, V5 final, V5 final, use this one, right? I mean, and so it's like, and you go in and everybody has identified with that. That just shows you where you are, right? And as in your system, right? And so you have to have a realistic expectation and kind of look at where you are. Like, oh, my system looks pretty well, but I have this team of 10 people that manually input everything into the system and check it and whatnot. Is that where the best use of dollars right now? Maybe so, maybe not. Depends on your industry, right? But you have to have a hard kind of look in the mirror, like what do I really have, right? In terms of that, right? The problem with HR, for lack of a better word, with the data set is there's no real standard or metric on how you put the stuff into the system. It's not like, your ERPs where there's gap accounting and all the rules on accounting that says this is how numbers are going to go into the system. This is how things are defined, right? And in terms of that, HR is like, well, if you want to do any leveraging on like, your recruiting areas of what college they went to, well, and I'm from Texas, right? So, maybe UT Austin is UT Austin. Maybe it's University of Texas at Austin. Maybe it's Texas. Maybe it's like there's no standard way of looking at things, and that is problematic because then you're like, you're trying to do analysis and like, oh wait, okay, first thing I do is I clean this up, and all those things are the same, right? Dallas, DFW, right? They call me the same thing in the system. And so there needs to be kind of for lack of a better word, come to Jesus. Like, what is your system really looking at, and what do I really want out of it, right? A lot of people will come to us and say, I don't like my system. Let's work on a process to get a new one, and we'll say, okay, what are you controlling your system, and what are you trying to get out of it? What isn't it doing? And the first question we ask is, how do you control your system? Is, well, what do you mean? Well, how you set it up? What are the controls? How are you maintaining it? What are the data fields, right? And if you can't answer that particular question, well, then you probably need to take a look at your system before you kind of go and say, okay, I need to go do an RFP for something else, right? Now, there is one caveat to that. My caveat is a practical caveat. If you need the capital dollars to make that change happen, then maybe you should do the RFP and get the capital change. But it's not necessarily a system issue. It's more of a setup control issue.
Yeah, that's typically it. Or the assumptions under which you set up your system no longer apply, or you're trying to
Yes.
ask new questions of the data that are newly anticipated, right? So like the DFW example came up in a conversation with a client, I think last week for me, where it's a retail organization. So like the specific location of a store matters a lot
Hmm.
for their business. So of
Hmm.
course the location
Yeah.
field is going to be very specific. For compensation analysis, it's too specific in some circumstances because that store that's around that
Right.
corner and around that corner, in theory, can operate differently, but the headcounts are too small to make any sort of sense of. So they need to aggregate
Correct.
out. Is it Fort Worth? Is it Dallas Fort Worth? Is it North Texas? Like you can keep drawing out the circles to figure out like what's the measurement that I care about. That's not the system's fault, right? Like the
Right.
system absolutely needs to know that you're at that store at that specific location because everything else within their environment is store driven. So it's like, don't blame the system. Don't even blame the data. Like your question just needs something different than that field is set up to do. Does that mean you set up a new field in the system for labor market? Do you agree that we're going to aggregate multiple locations and call them
Hmm.
labor market as like a named value in our analytics tool? Like there's 10 different ways to do it, but like don't blame
Right.
the system or even don't
Right.
blame the data. The data's right. You just
Yeah.
got to know how to use it right.
Well, and that's a great point. I think people get baked into their systems. They got it working where they want it to be. They're doing forecasting and scenario analysis, let's say, out of it, right? But the issue is that these new emergent things, right? Things are changing. Things aren't baked into the system, right? To your point, Sean, earlier, right? These systems have been put together and now sold, right? They're not it's going to be in arrears now, right? It's they're not going to have the leading technology. It's the demand of like, hey, I need a location field to represent the labor market, and that needs to be a one-to-many relationship here or many-to-one relationship there, right? Those are the things that you'll, to Paul's point, right? That people, when you get to that level, right, need to start saying, okay, this is what we're going to make the decision on. This is how we're going to do it. And then what I would reiterate what I said before is that then who's the executive in charge? Who makes the decision? When's that meeting going to happen? What's the frequency of that meeting to review it so that you don't put in something and then, 15 months later, you're like, oh, wait a minute. We realize this issue is actually caused from this. We need to adjust this, right? Or it sits there for maybe, a decade, right? Or 50 podcasts, right? So,
It'd be a lot less work if it was 50 podcasts over a decade. Um, I think in all of that, what I'll take away is, and I think you've heard me say it, Chuck, is in all of this stuff that because you can issue comes up is if you don't know where you're going, all roads will lead you there. The Cheshire Cat, quote. But to your point, you mentioned the business acumen and like still what are the drivers? And I think, Paul, is it a tool to help me get to where I'm going? But don't change where you're going based on it. Like that is still a business. And it's interesting to hear, every time, not every time, but when we have this discussion with you, Chuck, it always comes back to the toys, the tools are cool and they can do some cool things, but the fundamentals have to be in place. And they're just not as fun. I think what happens a lot of this is they're just not as fun, or going back to Brian Briscoe's comment, they're not as sexy as the other discussions. And so people want to talk about all the things it can do, not whether should it do it or can I do it because my underlying data is correct. They want to talk about the fun stuff, but it still is required.
Yeah.
So with all that in mind, Chuck, and all your experience, we always ask people kind of near the end, if you could automagically fix any one thing in HR, what would it be?
I think you probably know my answer already. It's data, right? It's a data governance and a standard data governance system on how things are put into it, so that you as a professional could go from organization A to organization B to organization C, and at least have like a construct of this is how data should be set up systematically, right? In terms of that, so you can say, okay, yeah, my tool is different. I have a hammer and a screwdriver. My screwdriver has cordless or whatnot, but at least I know how it's put together. I know how to go look at is this doing what I want it to do, right? Instead of what now happens, you go A to B to C. The first thing is like, do I believe what I see here? right? How does this put together, right? And what is your assumption on that, right? More specifically, Sean, if we could figure out like 8 names for what these standard location structures is going to be, you and I could go trademark that and say location means this,
Do
work
you
location means
remember, like,
this,
if you go
tax location
way
means that.
back when HR Tech started, Paul was probably still in school. 27, it's literally 27 years ago, probably, Paul, when HR Tech started. They had these committees, and one of them was the HR XML. Remember when XML was first coming out? And they were trying to
Yeah.
get a benefits and a whatever. And one of the reasons I pick on location is, I'll date myself, I was the first benefits committee chair back in the day. And location is why it always comes to mind, was like, I was new coming out of TA to benefits. And I'm like, let's start with something easy, location. And I'm like, yeah, I just stepped on that all by myself. And I remember that discussion, because then I got beat up for like, what do you mean this? And I'm like, I actually just meant a freaking location. That's all I wanted, was like an easy W. And it didn't happen. And so I think it is that data governance piece is going to be a role that we see more of
Yeah.
coming forward with AI. Like, you talk about headcount being reduced, but I actually think data governance becomes a role that companies are going to have.
Yeah, no, I would agree. Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off, Paul.
No, I was just verbally sort of acknowledging Sean's story.
I'm going to take that
I
as
think,
a win
yeah.
right there, as Paul
Yeah.
agreed with me. So took 50 episodes, but we got there.
I'm glad I was able to foster that agreement, right?
Yeah.
I'm a
Thanks so much
consensus
for,
builder.
I
right.
appreciate you coming on. I love when we get together and do the group things, Chuck. People can reach out and find you, get in touch with you. You're a wealth of information. So make sure, people reach out and find Chuck and Obsidian. And again, thanks so much for coming on for the 50th. We had to have a great guest for the 50th, so we invited Devin, Chuck.
That's right. No, the Devin.
Oh, the
The
Devin.
Devin.
Right. That's right.
The
The
Devin.
Devin.
Right.
The
Don't
Devin.
take the article away. Right.
Yeah. We can have the Chuck and
So
the Devin. So,
yeah, I don't know about the Chuck. That's like So
but thanks so
I think
much,
there's a bad
everyone.
movement
And
of that.
we are definitely looking forward to another season. We got to think, I don't know, we even figured it out. Paul and I have to figure out, is it 50 in a season, 52? I know there's 52 weeks. I don't know. We're not that thoughtful, so we have to figure it out.
I mean, I think of seasons like, Friends or Big Bang Theory. Like, they never had 50, right? It was
I know. So maybe we'll do
shorter
50 a
season.
season. 50, like 50 seems a round number. So the next one will be the kickoff of the next season then. So season 2 with Paul. But thanks again, Chuck. I really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Chuck.